and welcome to this very special live Saturday noon live with Tara. Sorry, I got a few minutes delayed. We have a wonderful guest who's about to join us, and I'm actually going to get him on the live in literally just a second. And I'm really sorry that I got a little delayed, but we're gonna have the amazing Dr. Zirak Marker joining us in just a few seconds. Dr. Zirak Marker is an eminent psychiatrist for children, for adolescents, for families, and in this time of COVID and more, I think all of us have all kinds of probably questions and thoughts on mental health, and quite frankly, I think all of us really probably have a lot of questions. So I would love for you guys to send in any questions you may have, and I'd love for I'm going to just let Dr. Zirak in now. So let's get this started, guys. Thank you for joining. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram, but the live will eventually go onto YouTube, YouTube as well as an edited video. But right now, most of the questions will be coming on Instagram. I'm so embarrassed. This is a typical case of me doing something wrong. Basically, I'm wearing like really rough pants with a slightly formal top, and I thought you couldn't see my pants, but I just realized you could. Okay, guys, so let's get started. Hi, I am Afreen. Hi, Daisy. Hi, Mukash. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And now let's have Dr. Zirak Marker. So exciting. Thank you, Bhavesh, for saying looking forward to this. Yeah, very sorry, I got very delayed today. Hi, Doc.
Hi, Tara. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Getting along.
We're all fine too, touch wood. And I'm sorry I kept you waiting for a few seconds, but as you are also a parent, you know that there's always hecticness going on.
Yes, absolutely.
I was trying to help one of them with an online birthday party, and the experiment they were doing blew up. So don't ask. That explains the wet hair and the very disheveled look. So for all of those of you who just joined us, we're live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. But currently, the live questions will come on Insta. But I've also Dr. Zirak got you. By the way, let me please tell you guys that Zirak is also a very dear friend. So I'm going to be calling him Dr. Zirak here. But in our normal life, I also call him Zirak. So how would you like to be addressed, Doctor?
Zirak is fine. It's absolutely fine. It will be strange if you call me Dr. Zirak.
Dr. Zirak. So basically, so just wanted you guys to know that there are also questions coming in on Facebook, on YouTube, and of course here on Instagram. So to start with, as I mentioned, Dr. Zirak is a renowned psychiatrist for children, for adolescents, for families, frankly, for all of us. And he's also the author of 2 amazing books, Parenting in the Time of Anxiety. In fact, I think is something that's so relevant, as is his other book at this time. And, I had this idea last night, Zirak, where I thought, while of course we all are grappling with this whole new world of COVID and lockdown, and everyone has their own way of coping, I thought instead of doing straight question and answers, I might try something a bit interesting and kind of maybe do a bit of a therapy session where I come to you. And the reason I say that is because I think we all, and this is where, of course, I want you now to just speak through the whole thing. I think we're all so much more aware of mental health now, perhaps, than we were before. And on a personal level, we all think we're fine. And I think most of us, still, even though we're so open-minded and we, stamp out any stigmas about mental health, when it comes to ourselves, we're still so unsure. If you're feeling low, if you're feeling unsettled, if you don't know what's going on, personally, I feel I'm quite a settled person and a stable person, but I find in lockdown, especially going into the second year, I often wake up a little bit unsettled, So my first question, Doctor, is, especially in these strange times, when does someone know that they need to seek professional help from a mental health expert? And when does one know that it's something you can just deal with yourself and with your loved ones?
Sure, sure. That's a very, very important question, actually, Tara, because I think at some point in our lives, just to quickly answer what you just said, I think we all need help, right? And when I use that word help, I think it's not just professional, but I think accepting and identifying that at some points in our lives, through childhood, young adulthood, and later on in stages of life, we are all going to go through mental health setbacks and concerns. And I think we need to first understand what mental health is. You know, mental health is not just the suicide and the depression and the schizophrenia that we kind of so ever, read up on. I mean,
Yeah,
it is, I mean, when you actually see what the definition is, it is emotional, psychological, and social well-being, right? It's
yeah,
basically how we think, how we feel, and therefore how balanced we are, right? In our day-to-day life, in our functionality, with our relationships and with our professional life. And I think what stands out for me the most, which is like like a goal that we all need to have in life, is a very powerful word that has come more in the forefront now than ever, which is resilience, right?
yeah,
Resilience, which is that inner strength, right? Not just to cope with what life throws at you or whatever hurdles and challenges that we have, but to develop that inner strength to
yeah,
have healthier coping mechanisms and
yeah,
therefore be able to emerge stronger. And that's where we realize that, and that's what I'm trying to say, that mental health is like this spectrum, right? With
yeah,
well-being at one end of the spectrum and illness at the other. And I think most of us, right? I mean, there is apart from it being stigmatized and taboo, I think we don't acknowledge it. There is a
yeah,
lack of awareness towards what really mental health is. And I think thirdly, we all feel it's a phase, it'll just pass, or the subjective feeling that this can't be happening to me. What will people think and say? I mean, there's such a shame about going and seeing a psychiatrist, or there are so many taboos about even therapy. People don't know what therapy is. People
yeah,
feel when you go and see a mental health professional, you'll be judged, you'll be labeled, you'll be put on medication which you'll have to take for life, or you'll gain, side effects and weight gain and things like that, which is all not so true, right? And
yeah,
I think the main thing everyone has to understand is there is a clear distinguishing line between what are psychiatric problems and
yeah,
what are psychological issues. And talking about psychological issues, I think, like I said, if nothing else, this 1 year has shown up that all of us, right? I mean, in fact,
yeah.
WHO is stating and saying that we are one of the most depressed countries in the world. Uh, we are the third leading cause of death by suicide between ages of 15 and 19 years of age, with
My God.
one suicide attempt every 3 seconds as we speak, and one death by suicide every 40 seconds. And that's
Oh
how
my gosh.
alarming the rates are as per WHO statistics as of today, right? And they feel
My
that
God.
the next crisis globally is going to be that of mental health post this pandemic. So we have to have the knowledge and the awareness and the preparedness to understand how this is all going to pan out and affect not just our children and teenagers, but even us as adults. So coming back to the main difference, right? I mean, psychological issues, like I started off saying, is something we all go through, right? Who doesn't
Yeah,
go through emotional setbacks? Who doesn't go through stress?
yeah,
uh, Marital concerns, relationship issues and ups and downs with our children, with our loved ones, with our own parents, issues with our friends, stress at work, burnouts, right? We're all facing screen burnouts, working from home and juggling that balance. So
yeah,
when you look at all of those aspects, we are all going to go through issues at jobs, issues with relationships, issues with stress at work, financial setbacks, illnesses. I mean, the whole feeling of uncertainty, right? I mean, each of us,
yeah.
I think, in our own way, is grappling with anxiety of the unknown. And that's what this pandemic's taught us, right? This one little microscopic virus has held the whole world to ransom, so to speak. And
Absolutely.
that all that attributes to emotional and psychological issues. Now, psychiatric. So what you asked, right? When do you
Yeah.
feel you need professional help, and when does one need? So I feel professional help, to be honest, can be sought by anyone. I mean, I can talk to a professional about how to achieve more of my goals and motivate myself more from my professional perspective. I can
Right.
talk to a therapist about certain marital setbacks that I may have. I may
Yeah.
talk to a therapist about having few sleep concerns and feeling overwhelmed or stressed even amidst the pandemic. So
Yeah.
psychological help can be provided for that too. Now, psychiatric, what's the difference, right? Like how we have hormones in our body, there are certain neurochemicals in the brain. And I think the most widely researched and studied ones are serotonin, which keeps
Right.
our moods balanced, and
Yeah.
dopamine, which basically is the reward center of the brain, and it is in charge of all our cognitive abilities and our thought processes. Now, when there are imbalances, right? Now, when I use that word, like for example, I could do a blood test and find out that I have a blood sugar level imbalance or high cholesterol levels, right? In the same way, these two neurochemicals could get imbalanced with or without any stress at all, without any external factors. And when they get imbalanced, they cause then clear clinical signs and symptoms then of depression or of schizophrenia or of bipolar disorder. And those are, what we call as psychiatric disorders, which are like any other, health conditions, and
Yeah.
those need medical treatments. Like I can't treat bipolar disorder with only a conversation and with therapy. I can't treat
Right.
a schizophrenic patient who's going through, say, hallucinations and delusions with only therapy and counseling. And if I'm
Yeah.
going through clinical depression, where I'm feeling like, helpless, hopeless, worthless, and, the feeling is just not passing away, and these symptoms are day in and day out without any external stressors and factors in my life, that
Right.
itself tells me and indicates to me that these are red flags and warning signs of a clinical condition, and I therefore perhaps need to see the right professional and start the right treatment. But
That
having
is
said
so
that,
well
yes, if
explained.
it is not just only through medication and medicines like people usually feel, it has
Yeah.
to have a holistic approach, which we can discuss, as we chat.
But that is so important and so interesting, and you've taught us all so much in that answer. That firstly, to differentiate between psychiatric help and the psychological. And I think I'm an eternal optimist, as you know, and even in these difficult times, I keep trying to find those silver linings, and things like family bonding and all of us getting more in touch with, I guess, the simpler things and valuing those things, and also more in touch with our own mental health. And frankly, it's very reassuring to hear from an expert like you that it's absolutely okay to have psychological um, concerns, and we all do. And I think, as you rightly said, it's just like everyone can get a cough and a cold and a fever. Similarly, everyone can have psychological you know you know
Setbacks, yeah.
setbacks. And I think, as you so rightly said, the minute it gets into the psychiatric and the chemical imbalance type thing, that's when you really do need to also seek professional help, and that might involve medication, and it may not. We have so many questions coming in, so instead of leaving questions right for the end, what I'm going to do is things that I think when I see that are sort of relevant for right here, I'm just going to ask. So we have a question from YouTube, Paki Raju, who's in San Francisco, and he stays up all night to watch these lives. It's very sweet. What advice would you give to those who have anxiety and low self-esteem, self-efficacy? He said, but yeah, people who have low. So again, I think this also comes to the first question, that if you're feeling like that, would you suggest somebody goes and sees a professional, or starts with talking to their family, or what would you
So
suggest?
that's a very, very relevant question. And I think, like I started off saying, right? I mean, anxiety, if nothing else, is something that we're all grappling with. Again, in
Yeah.
different variations. Like I might, like to be honest, I'm most anxious, guess about what? It's going back to normal life.
Yeah.
You think about it, even students, I'm just thinking about our own children, our babies, right? I mean, they've got so used to maybe just studying at home and living in this unrealistic bubble of wellness, but
Yeah.
we don't realize that our kids also, no matter what age, are going to really struggle going back to a school bus with the noise, classrooms of 20, 30 kids, if not more, and suddenly being independent again. They've got so codependent, I think, with us that they've lost perhaps autonomy, and I'm forcing a lot of anxiety across all age groups. I mean, kids have even got away by not giving board exams and stuff like that, and the younger ones have even lamented that they've forgotten how school life and how school even looks. So
very heartbreaking.
anxiety, so anxiety, I think, is again a spectrum. So to answer his question, I think with any condition, right, when the feeling comes and goes, and you can somewhere mindfully acknowledge that, okay, I'm anxious, like how I said, I mean, I'm so used to having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my kids, and so happy in my own little bubble. And even this kind of work, right? I mean, if you think about it, we don't have to actually have meetings and spend hours in traffic and in cars anymore. And I've had sessions now with families all across the world, which I could never imagine, say, before the lockdown. It's always physically meeting in the office and things like that. So the world's become smaller. We've been more productive at some way with our work. So I love what you said, and I think I'm a firm believer in that silver lining concept, which is constantly looking for the positives amidst the negatives, looking for the good in each one of us. No one's perfect. We all have our own strengths and our own areas of setbacks or weaknesses, but it's the perceptions of thought and how we strengthen those thoughts to constantly look for those positives and strengths within us, within our lives. It starts with introspection. So when one goes through anxiety, one has to start with the journey of self-work by looking within first, analyzing your thoughts, a metacognitive approach, which is the ability to think about your thoughts, to see whether they are rational or not, whether my fears or my anxieties make sense, or are they unconfounded or irrational, and understanding if there are any external stressors or not. Now, when you understand and categorize that, okay, it is work, or it is family, or it is XYZ that's stressing me, with a kind of a calm mind, you have to find and try and create and generate solutions for those problems. There's no point thinking about it just as a problem, right? You have to understand that, okay, fine, I have these setbacks in whatever areas, but I have to, with a calm and a peaceful state of mind, generate solutions for the same. But now, if those don't seem to go away, where the symptoms, like say panic attacks, right, which is a very severe pounding of the chest, increased heart rate, sweating, in fact, they say 90% of people who experience a panic attack for the first time in their lives end up in the ICU, or they end up in an emergency room because they feel it's a cardiac manifestation. The symptoms are so physiological and so real, right? Now, when those aspects happen and the symptoms don't seem to go, and here is the key sentence, when your day-to-day functionality starts getting eroded because of these symptoms, whether it's anxiety or depression or feeling low, helpless, hopeless, and you start getting extremely irrational thoughts which are not keeping in alignment of who you are in that sense. Now, when you have these severe changes which are starting to impair your day-to-day functionality, that's when you have to seek professional help.
That
and
is
professional
very
help
good point.
in terms of a psychologist who could perhaps see you first and understand what your symptoms are, and then sometimes psychologists will make a referral to a psychiatrist in case you need therapy which is more intensive, or then you need medication for certain specific symptoms. But then, of course, for anxiety, there is so much else, which is the silver lining concept, trying to align your thoughts, being more mindful, distracting your thoughts all the time and keeping centered to the present. I think all of us with anxiety are constantly stuck in this loop of negative thoughts or depressing thoughts of the past, or then constant worry about what next and the future. With the result is, I think we've all forgotten how to live in just the moment, in the present, right? And I think that's such a powerful thing to remind us that we have to take each day as it comes and try and be, center our thoughts and our focus onto the here and now, into today, and to being present all the time mentally.
That's such a good point. I think that's fantastic. And, people on Facebook and YouTube can't see Dr. Zirak, so they can hear you. They only see me giving my expressions of nodding. But Paki Raju said, I'm sure he could hear that answer. And I think it's so relevant. And I think what really struck me with what Dr. Zirak said was about, if your anxiety is actually affecting your day-to-day life, then you need to really, really get help. And I think for all of us, there is always some level of anxiety. And I think, again, trying to be a bit of an optimist and try and find the silver linings, even in this terrible time, while we hope and pray we all and everyone are fine and safe, touch wood, I do think that, there's so many lessons that we're going to come away with, like looking within and finding those silver linings, staying optimistic, and realizing that it's okay to not be okay. I think there's always been such a stress, even on children, to always be well and fine and all of us be happy and fine. But it's actually absolutely okay to sometimes not feel so good. And if you are anxious, then to seek help. I think those are really relevant and great points. Now, I have somebody else here, sorry, just asking me, sorry, I don't know where this went. Sorry. So doctor, now coming to children, and of course, we're also, parents. I tend to feel, and again, this might be the optimist in me, I feel that the kids have done so well. I think they're doing so amazingly with being so resilient and adaptable, and they're being so incredibly, I would say, inspiring to us. As Can you hear me? I think somehow it seems to have got a bit stuck. Are you there? Let's see if Dr. Zirak is able to rejoin. Hi, Doc. I'm so sorry about this. It's never happened. And, this is the kind of thing that could set me off on a slight bit of anxiety. But you know what? The good thing is that it's also, one thing I've realized is another huge help apart from kids and family and silver lining is laughter. I find if you can find things to laugh about, even when you're feeling slightly anxious, it really helps. Oops! Sorry, I'm like, okay, now I'm being silly, but that fell. You see, you're balanced on some books. This is my home setup. So firstly, I'm extremely apologetic that happened. And I know that you might be in a rush. So please tell me quite honestly, how much time do you have? Because I have so many people asking so many questions. So I've already posted, by the way, the first part. So we've not lost anything. That's why it took a few minutes. So it's all posted. And when we edit it onto YouTube, you'll have a very clean, full conversation without showing this. So I think everyone who was on the live have actually rejoined us, because I see a lot of the same people. So going back to where we were, Pakiraju from San Francisco says, thank you so much, Dr. Zirak, for the answer. I like how he said most of the time it is irrational fears, and it is good to step back and look within ourselves. So I think that's wonderful advice. Jacob is asking, what are the warning signs of depression in children? When do we seek professional help for them?
Sure. So depression also, Tara, is like a spectrum. And I think many of us who deal or grapple with depression don't even know sometimes that, that we have it from a clinical perspective, right? And that's because depression also is if you look at it from a clinical perspective, it is the serotonin neurochemicals in the brain that do get dysregulated either with an external cause or a reason or not. Right. And I think even before getting into the actual clinical warning signs and red flags of depression, one must understand what the risk factors for a mental health disorder or a condition are. And one of them is clearly, one must be cognizant if there's been a family history of mental health, either in our parents or grandparents or uncles or aunts. That's one. So like a family history, to just be aware of that is very, very important. Sometimes they say even having or growing in a home environment with a family member also who has a mental health concern, right? That can also contribute as a risk factor. Then of course you have the other risk factors which are life-changing events. So death, divorce, severe trauma through abuse, which can be very, very long-standing. abuse, through verbal abuse, physical abuse, any kind of traumatic events, an alcoholic or a parent or a drug addict in the house, and if there is also a long-standing, health conditions in itself, like chronic cancer and other conditions which either the child or the young adult is grappling with. So those cannot surmount, what the kind of risk factors are.
Right.
Then, of course, when you feel, so what are those red flags of actual clinical depression where one needs to then seek help? One is, of course, when there's a persistent, consistent feeling of sadness and lowness, and even constant irritability, where clients come and tell me, and this is children, teenagers, or adults, right, where there's a constant feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, worthlessness. Everything seems overwhelming.
Right.
So even the smallest of triggers or the smallest of stressors, one feels that they can't cope with those tiny, small setbacks in life. Another third very distinct aspect of depression is when there's a complete lack and loss of interest in almost everything. So even in previous pleasurable activities, it could be a hobby, sport, socializing, getting out, all that seems to kind of really ebb down. And all this obviously leads to, behavioral, emotional, and physical changes.
Right.
Psychosomatization. That's another very common thing. Constant headaches, body aches, muscle stress and tension, and all other kind of vague medical symptoms which don't have any kind of real medical answers.
Right.
Also, very low energy levels, constantly feeling tired and fatigued all the time. Low drive, low sexual drive, low motivation, constant negative thoughts, lots of pessimism and nihilism in the thought processes. And of course, sometimes, and most of the times, a lot of suicidal ideations, right, where you are constantly feeling either actively to take your life or plan to take your life, which is a real serious condition then, or then thoughts of I wish I was dead, kind of, like a constant negative approach of that, or looking at life in that whole negative spectrum. And of course, at the end of it all, like I said, functionality. So your day-to-day functioning, even getting off the bed to face the morning starts becoming challenging. Paying attention, focusing, concentration, just getting yourself into the shower and taking care of yourself in terms of health or hygiene, all these aspects kind of decline.
Yeah.
And for children and younger, teenagers who are still in their academic realm of life, academics take the big hit. So for adults, you can't function and focus at work. So your work output declines a lot, and therefore the functionality there. And for children, just staying engaged in the classroom, studying, focus, concentration, all that heads down. So when these are your typical warning signs of depression, either when you realize it yourself or you have a child or a family member who's going through this, you really need to urge them to see a mental health professional at that time.
That is very, very good advice. So, Jay, to answer your question, Jacob, about seeking professional help for children, I hope you heard everything Dr. Zirak said. But as I mentioned, it's all going to be edited and put on YouTube too. But watch out for signs of, constantly feeling helpless or feeling, very low, feeling fatigue constantly. Anything that is, I guess, anything that is constant, in terms of in a negative space, because I think, while of course we're all talking and much more aware of mental health, I think there's also, this is what I wanted to ask you, that fine line of knowing when something is actually just regular normal feeling low, because there's a tendency to think that either you have to be absolutely fine all the time or you have mental health issues. But the reality is, being normal also entails a fair amount of feeling low sometimes, right? So I think knowing
that is a very, very important you brought up, Tara, that again, I think lots of us overdiagnose or self-diagnose ourselves through Google searches and all of that, and the silly online things that people end up doing to find out through a checklist whether they have like a psychological or a psychiatric issue. And those are really, really wrong things, because if I'm in a lower mind space, like you said, which is absolutely normal, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm doing a subjective test online, I mean, it will come out and show that I have depression. But that's not the way to diagnose a clinical entity. And that's why it's very, very important to seek professional. And I say this to all families, like with our own child. If, say, my child has a tooth problem or a cavity that's really hurting, I'm not going to take him to my pediatrician.
Exactly.
I will go to my dentist.
Yeah.
If my kid has been diagnosed with some cardiac anomaly, I'm not going to see a general physician. I will see a cardiologist.
Right.
So
yeah.
in the same way, mental health is a professional entity in itself and a specialty in itself. And why not? And
Absolutely.
why not seek the help?
Absolutely.
And what we really have to understand here is that early intervention is the key to prevention.
Right.
And with anything that's medical, you look at cancer also, right? If it's in stages of stage 1, etc., and you catch it on time and you diagnose it appropriately on time, the treatment outcomes are far, far better and superior.
Right.
And another thing I really want to highlight here, which is again a very interesting WHO statistic, they say that by the time a mental health concern emerges,
yeah.
or it starts acting up in one's life, and by the time that person or that young adult seeks help professionally, guess what the time frame is? 8 to 10 years.
Really? My gosh.
So imagine, by the time symptoms emerge and by the time someone actually
gets help, yeah,
to actual professional help, it's an average of 3 to 10 years. And that's how behind we are in terms of that knowledge and that awareness. And that I'm again repeating and reiterating that the earlier you intervene, the earlier you identify the warning signs or the red flags, and the earlier you take the right kind of steps and intervention,
yeah,
the far better prognosis. And I think what we need to really understand here today also is the holistic approach towards mental,
yeah,
in its treatment.
I think that is such valuable advice, that if you do need, if you have these symptoms and if you need help, then early intervention is absolutely crucial, much like it would be for any ailment. So that's really, really good advice. And I also really like what Dr. Zirak also said about don't over-diagnose or self-diagnose, because like if your children are having, little tantrums here and there, that's also normal, so it's not that everything becomes something that you have to go, like we all know, if our kids have a little cold or a cough, we don't always go running to a pediatrician. So similarly, the things that you can manage and handle, do that. But if something is getting out of hand, then definitely seek professional help. So actually, taking on exactly from there, we have it's simply Mariam asking, so many people suffering from depression around us, how can we help if they don't want to seek medical help? As a friend, how can we basically help? Like, what can one do as a loved one to help somebody that you think is going through mental health concerns?
It's a very, very lovely question. And in fact, there's a whole, I've done that course. It's basically mental health first aid.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she's asking. So when there are a lot of loved ones out there who perhaps don't have insight also that they're going through someone, I think as loved ones, friends or family members, we need to equip ourselves with the knowledge.
Right.
Right? So when you clearly understand and know with reading or with even approaching, and that happens, right? We have a lot of family members actually who consult us professionally with this, saying that they have, either a friend or a loved one or a spouse or a mother, father, sister who is perhaps going through something but they don't know how to address it. So one is that, where you actually again approach someone professionally to understand whether this is something clinical or not, or in need of intervention or not. Second, I think for any emotional, psychological or mental health concern, I think at a point when someone is suffering, I think what one really needs to know and understand that we have your back.
Yeah.
So unconditional love, unconditionally being there for that person, constant check-ins. It can be a one-line WhatsApp message or a text message or a quick check-in or a phone call. That really helps a hell of a lot. Just knowing that you have someone's back unconditionally. Sometimes not asking irrelevant or saying silly things like, oh, just go get a drink, or a lot of clients tell me that they get put off or they get really irritated when there are these invalidating statements. Like, oh, just go out and have a drink, or just go out and have a cup of coffee with a friend. Everything will get fine. So, or it's a passing phase. What's the big deal? Or when they start talking about themselves, like, I've gone through all of this. So, like when you do these things, I know it's sometimes, in all best meaning possible, but these create invalidation. So when the person's actually feeling all this, they shut down further.
Yeah.
So being cognizant to not be invalidating, to hear someone out.
That's a very good point.
And no bias. Listen to what the other person is saying. Don't interrupt. Come down to their level. So if it's a child or a teenager, you need to come down to that level of understanding. If it's an adult to adult conversation, your body language, how you sit, how you maintain eye contact, how patiently you listen to that person, right? And then when you garner that kind of trust and you foster that good, healthy communication levels, then you can always suggest that listen, I think and I feel that these are mental health concerns, or what you're sharing with me sounds like you perhaps might be having anxiety, depression. Why don't we do this together?
Yeah.
And that also gives a lot of strength, right? When you know that the person
somebody's with you,
just being told to do something alone, you're even offering to perhaps go and seek help. And I think that's what, when we suggest that, it's lovely to see. Sometimes even just best friends come along with a client to our center or the office, and they just need that to start.
That's really, really good advice. Dr. Zirak is saying that if you have, not everyone's, it's not only that somebody may not be open to going to seek help with mental health. They may not know if they need it, and their first point of call often would be their loved ones, which would be family and best friends. So sometimes as a best friend or as a family member, you may not know what to do. So this was great advice on how to be to listen, to have no biases, to actually listen and not project your own views or your own, because I think that's something people do, right? We all think that if we say, oh, even we're going through something, then it kind of makes it an even playing field. But it's so important to listen. Another question I had, doctor, is...
Sorry, just one more thing I want to add.
Yeah.
Actually, the key word over here, Tara, that all of us, right, need to invest with our loved ones is true empathy.
Empathy.
And I think we lack, to really be an empathetic person in that person's life, I think is half the battle.
Absolutely. And I just think that sometimes, because recently, we've read a lot about suicides, and as you rightly said, it's staggeringly alarming and upsetting that India has such a high rate of suicide. I know that you did a workshop yesterday with Naina of Safe Space, and I'm so sorry, I actually didn't see that message she had sent me till later. But there are some wonderful organizations which are out there for anyone who has thoughts of suicide or anything like that. And I also saw, Dr. Zirak, in one of your chats where you spoke about how, contrary to what we may think, it's actually important to directly ask someone if they have suicidal thoughts. So tell us a little bit about that, because one would imagine that these are the kind of things that you shouldn't say. And especially when it comes to children, you don't even want to give them, you don't even want to sometimes say that there's something like that. So what are your views on that? Because that was a whole new thing to me, to hear that you should actually vocalize and ask about that.
So you're right. So when even we were training and studying, years back, I mean, many years back now, 20 years back, or even in those days, some of our professors and professionals had a misconception was that, oh, you must not ask children, must not simply plant certain thoughts into their head.
Oh gosh, I hope this internet thing hasn't started again. Yeah, not to plant certain thoughts in their head, but go on. I can hear you. Can you hear me, Zirak? I can hear you. Oh dear. Okay, for everyone on YouTube, I'm going to say bye on YouTube. I'm actually going to take the Instagram one outside because I can't hear doctor. I'm not sure why. Why has that happened? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can't hear me? Everyone who's on our live, can you hear us? Are you able to hear us? Oh God, this is really frustrating. I don't know why this has happened. Just a sec. Can't believe that we might have to do a third part of this. Why would that be? Why would it suddenly go? The sound. Okay. Let's try and add Dr. Zirak back. You can hear me, but you couldn't hear Dr. Zirak. Let me see if we can add Dr. Zirak back. Not sure why that happened. I can hear you. Hi for an eye, says Dr. Bhag Gaya. No, can't hear Dr. Zirak. We couldn't hear him. But now, let's see if this works. 1 second. I'm so sorry about this, but I can see that people don't want this conversation to end. We have so many amazing questions coming in from Facebook, on Instagram, and I'm just going to ask once again and see if Dr. Zirak is able to join. But there's so much great footage and great information that's come from all this. So let me just try once again to see if we can get Dr. Zirak back on. Not sure why that's happening. He's not able to join back. But this has been so interesting. Eye for an eye. Jay says, my stress is now affecting my hair and my face. What should I do and how can I minimize stress levels and stay happy and motivated? Going to ask Dr. Zirak that as soon as he's back. I'm not sure what has happened. Tech glitches are part of live chats, I know, but it's really upsetting that happened. Oh, Dr. Zirak is back! Third time lucky. I know, but you know what? You know what's so amazing and encouraging? And I must tell you, Zirak, that while we've all been locked up, one of the things that have been a silver lining for me, apart from family and all of us being together and healthy and fine, touch wood, has been these interactions, these live interactions. You know, I've been conducting these Saturday noon lives. I've been doing yoga with Tara, and it's so amazing. Like even now, there were so many messages saying, bring him back, let's chat, let's keep going. And I find I keep telling my, these communities that this has been a huge part of, for someone like me, keeping me in a routine. And I think I heard you say in another chat that routine is so important in these strange times. And I so agree, whether it's with the children, even for ourselves. I find sticking.
But I do want to bring up that point, what was very important, right, about the suicide thing.
Yes.
So like I was saying years back, we were actually told that don't ask someone directly, don't ask children, don't plant these thoughts.
Yeah.
And every bit of research and studies now, especially from the Youth Mental Health First Aid in Australia, have actually said that two things. One is normalize conversations of mental health in children as young as you can. And why? I mean, we talk about so much in life, right? I mean, about our kids. Our kids are any which ways exposed, whether it's the negative news, whether it's suicide. And I mean, I've had to talk to my 7 and 9-year-olds about it as well. And the more we have and normalize conversations about mental health, about sexuality, about abuse, about death, about divorce, about all these difficult conversations, which I've in fact even written in my second book, right? The Conversations That Matter.
Yeah.
You're normalizing this their little brains without stigma, without bias, without judgment.
Yeah.
And when you're empowering them, age appropriately with this knowledge, then of course you're going to have a more heightenedly aware child who's also perhaps got another sense or a better sense of emotional intellect.
Yeah.
And when you're more aware, like I said, there is more acceptance of yourself, with your strengths and weaknesses. more acceptance with other people, despite their backgrounds or their disabilities or their challenges, and that makes you a better human being. And when you know that someone is perhaps contemplating suicide or is not in a good space, they say when you ask that question as directly and honestly as possible, you could perhaps just save a life.
Wow, that is such enlightened and that's amazing advice. I had no clue, and I'm pretty sure most of us didn't know that if you know of anyone who you think is contemplating suicide, it's actually important to directly ask that question. You could actually save a life. That is so interesting to hear. And over here, as I mentioned, Safe Space does a lot of work with suicide prevention. And I have many people, there was a lovely comment here where I'm trying to see who it is. Someone said talking about suicide does not promote suicide. So I think that's a wonderful thing to have said. Now, coming to another question, which we talked about very briefly initially, about medication. You know, when people take medication for mental health issues, there is this slight stigma about, oh my God, will someone be on it for life? Or what are the after effects? What are the side effects? So can you tell us a little bit about the allopathic medication that might go with certain mental health conditions? You mentioned bipolar and things which are more extreme than regular.
So basically, so treatment is not only basically with medication and allopathy. I look at treatment from a holistic approach with mental health. So when I use that, it's physical health, mental health, gut health.
Yeah.
You know, when I talked about those neurochemicals like serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine, they're also created in our gut.
Yeah.
So looking after these three attributes become very, very important. Second, studies and research have clearly indicated that mental health concerns are also sometimes with natural depletions of elements in magnesium. So regular supplement works wonderfully for sleep and for anxiety. So does zinc. They talk about using omega-3 fatty acid. So that's a huge supplement used even for children with attention and focus and concentration problems. It's supposed to be great from a mental health perspective as well. For the gut health, using probiotics in its most natural form, in fact, ghee at home or yogurt, but you get probiotic supplements and capsules, which are excellent for mental health again, for depression especially.
Fascinating.
And of course, your B3, B12, B6, your B complex supplements there. So, and vitamin D3, you don't realize how much of vitamin D3 plays its role in mental health.
Right.
So these are the 5 top foods and supplements that are important to use and take when there is a mental health issue. And from the allopathy perspective, like I said, when you've got a clear diagnosis that this is something clinical perhaps and you need medical intervention, there are very scientific and smart medications out there that have been created and researched over years now that don't cause dependency. You don't have to take them for life. You don't have to, be dependent on them all your life as well. But they come and you have to take and complete the short courses. So for depression also, no matter how mild, I don't believe in multiple drugs. See, unfortunately, with a dearth of time, perhaps, and professions out there, sometimes, you see prescriptions which have 2, 3, 4 medications on them.
Right.
If it's depression, you take one antidepressant. If you have a mix of, say, anxiety and depression, then you may take 2.
Right.
But you have to complete that 6 to 9 month course, and after the course is completed, you can never just switch off the drugs.
Right.
With any of these psychiatric medications, you have to wean them down very slowly and carefully. And that's the biggest mistake sometimes families make, that I'm feeling 100% better even after, say, 2 or 3 months of taking these medications, that most young adults, stop taking them on their own. And research has shown that there's a very high propensity for a relapse if you stop your medications before the course ends. So constantly checking in with your psychiatrist, doing follow-ups. Counseling is not just chit-chatting like this. It is a very intensive process where you also work on the young person's thoughts, mind, perceptions, giving them healthy coping mechanisms. And like I said, for me, therapy, the most important journey is discovering yourself, right? So being more self-aware and working on yourself. And I truly believe the journey starts with it. You can't expect all your external factors and stressors to just disappear. You have to start working on yourself from within first, and then only will you see, changes with yourself, within yourself, and then what I call is the beautiful ripple effect, which makes changes in a constructive way.
That's fascinating. That's really, really great. We had a question here from Ujayavanti who said, how do you deal with aggressive behavior? And I don't know if that's something that's specific, or you have to know, as you keep talking about holistic, you need to know all aspects of something before you can.
So true. So aggression is a broad symptom, right? Now, aggression can be because you may be paranoid, or you may be having active hallucinations and delusions. If by chance you may be having schizophrenia, you can get aggressive if you have a bipolar disorder, where you go through manic phases and severe lows or depressive phases. You can get aggressive if you have severe OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, or you can just also be aggressive if children, especially, and young adults or teenagers. The worst fad right now is marijuana and pot and weed, which is so wrongly abused today by 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, where the brain's not even developed yet. And I'm finding that with alcohol use and other substance abuse is one of the main causes for personality changes, impulsivity, aggression, mood swings, irritability, all of that. But so it depends on what's causing the aggression. Therefore, treat the causative factor. So, for example, if I'm depressed because I'm aggressive because I have a substance abuse problem, I need to treat the substance abuse issue. If I'm aggressive because of schizophrenia, I need to treat the schizophrenic symptoms.
Right.
But the main thing with someone who's losing control and aggressive, we have to decide whether we are going to react back to that aggression or are we going to respond. And we have to choose the response, which is a more full approach to help de-escalate the aggressive response from the other side. So calming, again, talking in a very kind of mild way, because if you're going to be reactive with someone who's aggressive or abusive, you're only going to get, aggression getting more and more. So timing out yourself, removing yourself from that environment or that room, de-escalation strategies, and trying to keep your tone of voice, your body language, and what you're saying, in an attenuated way, so that you can, you bring down the aggressive behavior.
So that's very, very helpful. And somebody here, the anxious girl, is saying she was on medication under proper guidance of psychiatry for anxiety and depression, and she's off now, and therapy did wonders. It is a must. So thank you for sharing that. It's very touching when many people nowadays are sharing, thanks to conversations like this and people like Dr. Zirak. People feel that it's okay to share and everyone's there to support. And I think these are things that I think when we were kids, we didn't see. I don't even remember hearing words like mental health, or frankly, even words like autism or inclusion. These are all things that, again, trying to find the silver lining. I think our kids are growing up at a time when there's a lot more awareness about things like this. So I really do believe that they are naturally more empathetic because they understand, and earlier it may not have been that people were not empathetic, but without the information and the awareness, it was hard to know what things were, so there was just a tendency to say someone's mad or off their head without really understanding that that is actually something that has a name and can be helped with the right intervention. So that's really helpful. On YouTube, we have Jaskaran Arora ji. Thank you for joining, saying mental health concerns after we went through this horrendous third wave should in no way be taken lightly. Good going, Tara and Dr. Zirak, for focusing on this highly important topic of concern. So thank you. Also, just one, because I know we've actually had 3 parts of this live and it's already 10 minutes past 1, and I told Dr. Zirak it would be half an hour, so I don't want to keep him much longer. But just one thing I wanted to ask, that, we as parents, at least me, I have a tendency to praise the kids in these times quite a lot, because I genuinely feel that we have a lot to learn from them. I think they've in many ways adapted better than many of us. I think whether it's been online school for over a year now in India. And, I just feel like they've actually complained very little. They've kind of got on with it. They've found the good parts. They're figuring it out. And as a parent, of course, I'm waiting for physical school to safely start soon, touch wood. And I feel quite upset that India, I feel at a policy level, hasn't prioritized healthcare and education. And I do think other countries did have terrible second waves, but kids were still back in school and they found ways to do that. And of course, at a macro level, I feel that we are still the privileged few who have online access, and we are, touch wood, safe homes. But there are so many, the masses who may not have online, who may not even be in, or a large number of people who might be facing, difficult situations at home, whether it's abuse, whether it's lack of space. So, just for a minute, taking it away from our kind of, without being at all discriminating, but just taking it to a more of a mass conversation now. How do you think kids are coping in that situation, and what can we or anyone do to help? Because it petrifies me when I read statistics of abuse and, kids who are really having a very tough time in this pandemic.
Yeah. So kids, I think, we've been saying this again and again. I think it's affected them in three ways and in three age groups. I think the way kids under the ages of 6 that have been affected, or like say the lockdown babies, right? I mean, imagine kids as young as that have never seen a preschool, have never played in an open space or a garden, or never felt grass under their feet, or never socially interacted. And social skill development at that age and stage is such an important part for their milestones, right? And that's heartbreaking, because I mean, even friends' babies or my my own nephews, etc., who are so young and have never gone out, when they are even taken for a drive, for example, they have like a startled or an anxiety-filled response, because they don't know how it is to have all your senses heightened, right? Because we don't realize that there's a sensory overload out there in that outside world, right? So I mean, like I was telling you, like I can't even imagine, because academically also there's a setback. I mean, this is not a normal way to educate students. So online education, as beautifully as schools are doing it and trying their best, it is not the same, because education is not just about the content of subjects they're studying. It's social interaction.
Absolutely.
It's group dynamic, leadership skills, and all that go with physical education in that sense. And I think our kids of all age groups have got so codependent on us that we have to start weaning down the dependency. So we have to allow them, and it's natural, it's human. I mean, first of all, you all struggle to acclimatize and adapt to this online education. Now, of course, it's easier. But don't forget, kids are one-on-one. There's a little bit of a hitch. They look to us as parents, we intervene, and we're doing that. I mean, if it's connectivity, or if it's a worksheet they need, or a spelling that needs correction. So we're telling all parents that the three huge setbacks is going to be social skills, right? Because they've not just experienced normalization of that. Health issues, tons of kids going through sleep disturbances. They still are sleeping late. Obviously it's a mindset of I'm being at home. It's still like an extended holiday. Online burnouts, excessive screen time or gaming addiction, or online presence in teenagers. Physical concerns like starting from posture to headaches to borderline diabetes to poor hygiene levels to terrible sleep cycles, etc., and unhealthy diets. And of course, because of a lack of just sunlight, there's even vitamin D3 deficiencies. And the third entity is the academic setbacks, like I mentioned. So these are the three things we're seeing across and going to be seen across all age groups, right? So we have to structure and balance that. We have to ensure that the days are structured. Yes, mental health needs to be a priority. I mean, if there is an academic setback, I feel that's okay, but make sure emotionally they're secure and content, if not happy, and at least you have to look into their sleep, diet, online presence, and their physical health through exercising. There has to be physical movement. And yes, as you said, I think kids are superheroes in all of this. I think the way they've adapted and accepted to this lockdown, I mean, hats off to them, and they're the true heroes of this, along with teachers. I think school teachers are the other heroes through this lockdown.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Definitely, I think we really need to make the best of what we have. We have to teach, if nothing else, we have all this beautiful quality time with them to spend time. So being engaged parents, mindfulness, maintaining eye contact, even if it's not quantitative. I mean, I know we all are working, but even if it was few minutes or hours that we have with them, how engaged are you as a parent? How present are you? How are you shielding them from all the external stress that's going along at home or externally? How accepting are you of them? If you're going to keep pinpointing all their faults and their negativity, you're going to make them further insecure. Being balanced with the autonomy and the independence that you give them. Celebrating everything, small wins, small achievements, using tons of incentives, positive reinforcements, tons of creativity, art, dance, music, and humor. These are those 4 or 5 basics that if we can all incorporate in a structured way through the day, it's so important.
Absolutely,
and
that's such.
Lastly, teaching them concepts of emotional intelligence. This is the quality best times we have to at least make them better human beings, teaching them gratitude, teaching them mindfulness, helping them to navigate the thoughts and staying in the moment and being present. Teaching them the silver lining concept, right? Like letting them feel blessed for all that they have and what things are for them. And I think if we can create that safe bubble for them, I think our kids are good to go, because I think our mindset is now that we should be preparing them for normal life back again.
Yeah, and that in itself, that very statement is very hopeful, and it makes me happy because at least finally we're talking about getting back to physical schools and things like that. So that's really great. And I completely agree. And I'm going to actually make our kids watch this whole thing. In fact, I think without me knowing, they do from outside. They don't admit it. But basically, I think I've been stressing the importance of exercise from day one, because I've anyway been someone who's exercised every day, even if it's a little bit. I'm a big believer in consistent exercise, and we're lucky to have a small safe space that they can run around in. But I think whether it's inside or outside, it's so important, and for us as well. Something that just takes your mind away from all this. And as you said, there's chemicals that actually are released which help keep you positive and optimistic. So I think that's a really good thing. And creativity. I know your wonderful wife, Pia, who's also an educator, and I know she does a lot with the kids when it comes to creativity and ensuring all these other things. We also have one question, which, okay, I for an eye is saying here about 100 times he sent me something about, is marijuana regular use good for your health? So I think that's not a directly relevant, but Dr. Zirak actually spoke about how marijuana, if it's misused and abused, especially with kids, it can actually cause a lot of mental health issues as well. So that, I hope, answers your question, Aifra and I. I think we're going to let Dr. Zirak go, because this has been a 3-part live with so much in it, and I could keep going on and on. Frankly, I could talk till tonight or more, but it's really been so amazing. It's so amazing. And looking at all these questions and responses, I'm just amazed to see how much people are clearly think that this is such an important topic. We've got Ritu here saying thank you very much. It's a lovely live session. I've got to know a lot. We've got so many people here saying thank you so much. It's really lovely. I've learned so much. Thank you, Dr. Zirak.
I just like to state at the end that, we should, I really feel that we should have also realistic expectations. I think that's such a powerful 2 words to have for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our spouses, for our children. I think if we really, truly, in that extent of belief, have that acceptance for who each one of us are,
right,
and that there is no perfectionism, and that realistic expectations come through very strongly. That's the key towards what I truly believe that conquers all, which is unconditional love.
Absolutely.
And if we can propagate that along the way, a lot of, we get the word happiness, right? I mean, we discuss about what's happy and not, and it's normal to feel not okay sometimes. And that's the key word. We have to try and find inner peace.
Right.
And once that inner peace, it's kind of found within us, I think it's a ripple effect then in itself. Then it percolates into a more better sense of well-being. And it's absolutely okay to not be okay. There should be never any shame. You should never perceive not feeling okay as being oversensitive or as a weakness. You should really feel that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not seek help. And I totally want to just end by saying that early intervention, like I spoke about, and especially when you're young, don't forget most mental health concerns emerge and start when you're a child or when you're a teenager. And never let it be that 8-10 years like WHO talks about. So definitely, find that path, find that journey. Therapy can be a wonderful experience, if you have a right match. There's a lot out there. We have a center at Empower. We have free online 24/7 helplines. We have different specialties under mental health itself, from psychiatrists to counselors to psychologists. And we're not scary people. We do have our training, and and so please reach out if things are not okay.
Please, that's so wonderful, Dr. Zirak. We've got Paki Raju here saying we appreciate you, Dr. Zirak, for sharing your valuable knowledge with us. And I think what you've also done in this session is not just share amazing information, but the fact that you're so approachable and so easy to talk to. And as I said, I started this by saying, should I do a session live, which is kind of like what this is, because I think these are things that we're all concerned about. We all want to know about. I'm sure there are parents out here who go through their moments of freaking out. I know I do, where I scream and I shout and I admit it. And, maybe there was a time right at the start of being a mom where I would never have imagined I'd do that. Before becoming a mom, I thought I'll be very gentle and calm and all that. But, the truth is we're learning as we go along. And I find myself sometimes, if I have a freak out moment, I'm quickly very apologetic, and the kids often say it's okay, mama, and it happens. And of course one has to be cognizant, as you said, and look within and get help if you need it. And often a supportive spouse can be helpful, because one thing is, parenting, as we all know, is a constant learning experience. And in this closed lockdown parenting where we're all together, as much as there's amazing bonding, there are equally amazing fights. So I think it's nice to know that we're not alone in feeling that sometimes we are a bit mad, and not in a bad way. It's okay to have that, and to have somebody you can talk to, and if it's going out of control, then to reach out to an expert. So Dr. Zirak, if you get a call from me asking for an appointment, and that's not meant, I'm not laughing in a funny way, because it just normalizes it. It's okay and it's fine and it's good. Sometimes just a talk is so important, and I'm so grateful to you, Dr. Zirak. I feel I've had a great session, and I think everyone here who's joined us will think that too. So thank you. And Jacob says, thanks so much for this informative chat. On that note, lots and lots of love to all of you. Stay safe, stay happy, and I hope we can physically meet soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Tara.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.